Hi, and welcome to a Maximo Enablement session. Today's topic is incident management. I'm your host, Darren Quisnesia. This overview slide gives you a good indication of the capabilities that are added to Core Maximo once you install the HSE add-on solution. You can see that it does encompass a number of operation and maintenance processes. If we start on the left-hand side, you can see that one of the capabilities added to the HSE solution is around operational management. This is things like being able to record operator logs or drilling logs on the upstream side. This is the ability to define policies and procedures related to how you operate your equipment. If we move over one, we can see that there is change management capability that's been added to Maximo. This is really to do your due diligence around tracking sign-offs, approvals, pre- and post-start actions relative to a change that you're going to make in your organization. There's a lot of capabilities added around controller work and defect elimination. These include the ability to define a risk matrix and apply a full-blown risk assessment against work, projects, assets, locations within your organization. Today's topic is primarily going to focus around the next column, which is incident management, that ability to record an incident, to perform a full-blown investigation, CSI work into the incident itself, use a number of methodologies to determine root cause, and in the end, drive change or actions within your organization. There's capabilities added to the HSE solution to enhance the maintenance management capability. These get into more comprehensive work prioritization and determining condition for work. An asset has to be in a certain position or operating condition before you can actually work on it. There's a number of capabilities that have been added to the HSE solution to enhance the way we manage our assets, details around assets and locations, understanding our policies on maintenance, run to failure, planned maintenance, on condition-based maintenance. There are enhancements around the MRO supply chain capabilities around the way we recognize and receive equipment. Of course, enhancements around compliance, ability to define regulations. Any regulatory compliance document that's generated by a third party can be recreated in Maximo, and then actions, rules, and policies can be defined within the product. And then, of course, closing that loop up with knowledge management. Once you've, for example, done an investigation, understood what caused or what the circumstances were around an event, to actually build a knowledge database so people can read about it in a more FAQ type style and really understand the impact of their change or the incident itself proactively. The next slide, I'm going to show you one more slide, and this slide really is a supplemental slide to something we're going to talk about later, but I do want to show it now just so we don't have to toggle back to the PowerPoints. And this is really a risk matrix. This is a typical risk matrix that an organization would have. In Maximo, what we do is we recreate this matrix, so either two-dimensional, as you see here, or three-dimensional, which I know some customers have. The ability to define the severity or consequence of risk, and then cross-reference that with the probability that it will occur. So if we were going to, take a piece of equipment out of service, and we knew that there was, for example, confined space issues, well, we would determine, if someone was to get injured within that confined space, would it be major, minor, catastrophic? You would make that determination, and then cross-reference with the probability that it would actually occur. This one is a little bit unique in the fact that severity and consequence has been kind of categorized. A safety, catastrophic consequence means a fatality, where an insignificant is maybe a first aid issue. But if it was economic, catastrophic is more defined by over $100 million in damage, and insignificant is no increased cost or loss in revenue. So we're able to use this for multiple risks, whether it be safety, environment, or economic, using the same matrix. I show you this now because I'll show you how we actually recreate it in Maximo. So from there, let's talk about Maximo itself. So I've actually launched into the product, and what I'm going to show you is actually a story that will help us understand a fair number of the components that make up HSE. We won't drive into every single part and piece of the HSE solution, but it'll give you a fairly comprehensive understanding of exactly what these tools embed. Like most applications in Maximo, of course, you start with a core Maximo implementation. When you add the HSE add-on solution, you get a number of, in parentheses, HSE submenus and then HSE applications. So you can see right now I've got the service desk up, and within there I've got a lot of the defect incident investigation capabilities. Note that some of the extra ones you see there, notice of violation, inspection reports, or investigation reports, are actually just clones I've made of existing applications. So just take that with a grain of salt. That said, probably the first thing to really talk about is both the defect and incident. Now you notice I did create a clone called notice of violation. Really that's just a clone of defects. Defects and incidents are somewhat synonymous in what they do and the way they immerse you into the product. It really becomes more of an organizational decision on what they mean. We do have companies that do report defects and incidents separately. We have different customers that will actually, everything is an incident of a different priority or a different classification. It all depends on your organization, how you want to put those in the appropriate buckets. To me, a defect is like a violation notice. It's probably not severe in consequence, maybe no end results, no one was hurt, nothing was destroyed or damaged. But it was something that we at least want note of or record of in the system so that we can follow up on it. This might be guards missing off equipment. This might be a near miss situation. Those can all be defined within the defect application. If I bring up the defect application, I can just show you a single example here. So I've got an unpermitted discharge of a polluting substance within my environment. In some ways that might almost qualify as an incident, but for this organization they determined that it was just a defect. So unpermitted discharge of natural gas, polluting substance in the waters of the Commonwealth. This was all reported and documented. It was classified as an HSE notice of violation. If I go to the nonconformance tab, I see that it was a nonconformance regulation, a failure to submit well record and completion report. And if I go to the related records, I can see if there was any fault. Maybe this does drive to an incident and follows up accordingly. But this really is the level of detail you capture. You report the defect and then you capture the nonconformance information. Let's go look at how that's contrasted by the incident screen, and this is where I really want to focus. I want to mention defects so you know about it, but typically when I present, I start talking about the incident itself, just because it is more comprehensive and it gives you the capabilities to kind of take it further. And of course, with the story I'm going to tell, I want to hit a lot of parts of the HSE solution, so I want a fairly significant incident. Notice the list of incidents here. I just have a result set saved. It's showing me a number of incidents I've reported in Maximo. And I do this on purpose. It shows you that even though I'm using one single incident management screen, it's got a great variety in the type of incidents I can report. So if we look at the bottom, there's a guard missing on a machine. As I mentioned earlier, that potentially could have just been a violation notice or a defect, and it could have been recorded there. In my organization, I just say everything's an incident. I'm going to show you that I can just classify this differently, and then the end result is different when I do something as insignificant as a guard missing. But as you kind of your eyes ponder up this screen, you start to see, well, now I have an unpermitted discharge of polluting substance. Again, that's probably what ended up happening in this data set, is I created a defect and I realized it should be escalated to an incident. I've got a DOT pipeline incident, that again is getting more significant. Chemical spill, again, depending on if someone got injured or not, that gets reported. Broken arms, so now I'm talking first aid. So again, one application to report all different types of incidents, whether it's first aid, whether it's environmental, whether it's company reputation, policy, procedure, it doesn't matter, it all gets recorded in one screen. And then the last one I've got is actually Incident 2000, which is a major fire at a refinery. And that's the one we'll focus on and we'll kind of tell our story through. So stay tuned as we drive through that. So I'm going to bring up 2000. We can see very much a common Maximo look and feel. The list view gives us all our outstanding records. We've always got a new button to create a new record. And then, of course, we've got the actual record up on the screen. So we've got incident 2000. It was reported by Wilson. Wilson was the affected person. Summary details is that there was a refinery fire explosion. And then the details say at approximately 8:11 a.m. on this day, this time, there was a fire. And we'll get into the details on that. It was at the Needham refinery, priority, impact, site, a number of classification categories like incident type, reference ID, service group, site. Those can all be categorized if you want. Again, it allows you to put stuff in the appropriate bucket. Reported date, people impacted, all this is captured. Typical main header screen of Maximo. We've also got the ability to define what type of issue it is. When this was first reported, it seemed like a local issue. There was a fire at this refinery. As we talk through the story, you'll understand that it was more significant than a local issue. If I go look at the, one other thing to mention here is I've got the high context tab checked, and I've also got investigation required. So I know as part of the organization, because the significance of this incident, it's going to result in other documentation being created. We can also look at the attachments that are created for this particular one. So there was actually a picture while the fire was burning and a picture taken the next day. And it just helped put stuff into perspective as to the size of the fire, what was affected, what was impacted. So, of course, you've always got attachment capabilities in Maximo. Because I've turned on high context, I'm going to go to the high context tab. This is really our behavior analysis capabilities around incident management. It's the ability to identify the context of the incidents, the behaviors observed, the consequence of the behaviors observed. This is a lot of organizations are trying to understand, what are people thinking, acting, doing from a behavioral perspective when these incidents occur. So this really is, the ability to record that kind of data. So we've got our incident data in there. We've got our high context details in there. And then if we go look at our related records, we'll see that there was actually an investigation created from this incident. So one of the unique things about the incident management, investigation, improvements, MOC, pretty much the full gamut of HSE applications, is you've got the ability to create another application from an existing application. Let me explain that a little bit further. So in this situation, an incident is recorded in the system. Once someone has gone through it and understood it, what they're going to do is create an investigation to investigate why this incident happened. It's because of the severity of the incident itself. But if it was a guard missing, someone reported that as an incident, maybe the end result is just creating a work order so that your maintenance people go reinstall the guard. Pretty simple, not a lot of investigation required, but we do want to drive action. Maybe it is action, maybe it is a risk assessment, maybe it's just driving change. Someone reports an incident that, maybe they're having bearing failures, so they report that incident. Maybe that just results in a management of change request to your engineering department to redesign or use a different material for the bearings to be replaced out on this asset. So you've got flexibility. The nice thing is there's no limitations in what you choose. You define your policy within your organization, the way you react, and then Maximo gives you that capability. The nice thing is whether you pick an MOC or whether you pick a work order, whether you pick an incident or an investigation, it becomes part of the related record trail, and it really becomes a paper trail for you. You know that you were doing a work order, an incident arose, so now you've got work order, related record to incident. Then you determine the need to investigate the incident, so you investigate it. Then you do a management of change analysis to determine, the impact of the change. They all become related, so it doesn't matter where you are in that storyline. You can always either roll back and understand where it came from, or roll forward and understand where it went to. So with that, let's jump to the investigation. It makes sense to be the next step that we go through. So the incident was reported. We've got details on it. Probably a group of people have been now put together to form an investigation team and really try to understand what happened. This is where you're doing your CSI work. This is where you're talking to the operators. You're looking at historian data. You're looking at any of the operational control system data that you can. When did pressures raise? When did temperatures drop? When were systems turned off? When were systems turned on? And you're capturing all that data in one spot. So when I create an investigation from an incident, it copies a lot of the header information over. So I've still got location, dates, assets, all that stuff can be defined. But I've got flexibility to change any of that. And one of the things that I did do in this investigation is I classified it as an operational company investigation. Now, one thing I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to jump back to the incident because there's one other thing that I wanted to mention. And I apologize for kind of changing the script order here a little bit, but let me show you one other thing. One other thing I want to mention is when I report this incident, what I did is I classified it as a HSE operational company incident. So when I go to classify, I said it was HSE operational company reputation and viability, visibility, and it was an incident. When I classify it that way and I go to the specification tab, Maximo has questions that it needs me to answer because it was classified as that type of incident. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to change this. So I've got dollars lost, product, customers affected, legal implications. Let me reclassify this same incident, so it's my refinery fire. But again, just so we don't have to create another record, let me now say it's safety, employee safety, an employee safety incident. So this is more like a first aid situation. Notice the questions that the specification tab asks are completely different. Now, number of days away from work, body part injured, type of treatment, was the person reported back to duty within 48 hours? You're almost starting to get a lot of the questions that you'd have to fill out on an OSHA form related to personal injury captured in here. And of course, that's exactly what this is designed to do. You capture the values, number of days away from work. This person was away from 4 days. Body part injured. It was actually left arm. Again, all that data is accessible, so it can be used to populate a report within Maximo. So let me go back to where I was. Go back to related records. Go back to the incident, the investigation. And then again, I just want to reiterate, I reclassified this now as HSE operational company, but it's an investigation instead of an incident. And because of that, I've got different questions that can be asked on my specification tab. Now, because just for the sake of the way I enter data, it's very similar to what I was asking on the incident itself, but I've got that flexibility. So it really allows all your applications to be dynamic, so you don't have to add extra fields or extra tabs to the screen. You can leverage the classification structure to do that for you. So back on track here, and I apologize for that slight diversion. One thing I just forgot to mention. So we put our investigation header details in. Potentially there are activities, so this is one of the points where we actually can start capturing time. A lot of organizations will say we don't really know the true impact of an incident because we're not capturing all the details that we need to. Well, this is a tool that lets you, in order to capture, to go look through the rubble, it's going to take time and effort to capture, talk to operators, to do interviews, all that stuff is going to take time. And to actually track true costs, you've got to identify those activities and then the amount of time people spend on those activities. I'm going to skip through these couple here. I'm sure everyone that knows Maximo is familiar with logs. So we do have work logs related to the incident, related to the investigation, related to the improvement. Just different details, eyewitness accounts, DCS records, operator pipeline notes, etc. were all documented. Where I want to go, though, with this is, first of all, identify the after-action review group. So I've got an after-action review team leader and a facilitator. This group has kind of documented their review details, what should have happened, what actually happened, where were the differences, just so everyone's on the same page as they start to investigate this. There's date and time, there's team members. So this is really that group that gets together in the boardroom, sits down and looks through all the data and really tries to understand what happened related to this refinery fire. The last tab is really the most important tab. It's where you actually capture your details. So this is where I can do my failure analysis. This is where I can take data, put it into a comprehensive story, and really understand what it did. Now, Maximo right now, this has continued to evolve, but right now we allow you to do RCFA, root cause failure analysis, cause analysis, which is like a 5 whys type methodology. We also do FMECA, failure mode, cause and effect, so failure mode number, failure mode description, the effect, and the criticality. In this example, as you can see, I used RCFA, root cause, and that's the methodology I use to determine the cause or causes of this particular refinery fire. So let me put a little more context behind this now that we're at this point, so you really understand what happened. So this is actually a real-life use case. This company, in their refinery, they had an ethylene process where they would extract ethylene gas from a raw source substance. It was one of the gases that they were able to, or that they refined out. So as part of this process, every 12 hours they'd depressurize that line, switch processes, and reverse flow to dry out the line. When they did this, temperatures would change significantly, so the pipes would expand and contract. And these pipes, if you've ever driven beside a refinery, they're all overhead, up in the air, and because of that, they're all sitting on pipe stands. And it's a mishmash of piping. There's obviously other processes beyond ethylene. There's butane, propane, gasoline, all these different components that are extracted from the raw material. All are in different parts of this refinery. So this concentrated on the ethylene line. Well, what happened was this time when they were drying out the line, pipe expanded and contracted, slid back and forth on these pipe stands, and it happened to tear open the pipe stand. So it was high pressure gas. This gas flashed over to a drying furnace, instantly flashed back, started an explosion fire, and then because of the quantity of heat generated, it actually heated up secondary lines, those other lines I'd mentioned, and caused secondary explosions. So it turned into a fairly significant event. As they investigated this, they understood that, number one, the pipe stands, where the pipe sat on the pipe stands, there was actually a piece of metal sleeve that was welded to the bottom of the pipe. A good idea in context, because it would give a friction point, so the pipe would never wear out. The problem was you couldn't see these pipe sleeves, so this organization didn't even know they existed. They were smaller than the pipe stand, so you couldn't really see them there. So they did have a policy in place to inspect all pipe stands at a certain frequency, and they never saw any issues. Well, the problem was they couldn't see these sleeves, and of course water had collected under there over the last 40 years, and eventually, caused enough rust to tear that pipe open. When operations realized this happened, they definitely had a procedure in place to isolate that line. So they went to their, to the control board. They looked up what they needed to do, and one of the things was they could actually isolate the source of that ethylene. So they sent an operator out to close a valve. Well, the valve was an overhead valve, again, because of the way the piping's configured. And the valve, it was chain driven. The chain was actually off the sprocket. So they had to take a little more time to go get a ladder to actually reinstall that chain. When they got the chain installed, they went to operate it, and it was seized up. So there was no maintenance policy to actually operate that valve. So the valve itself had seized up. So they actually had to isolate downstream, obviously resulting in more gas burning off, temperature increasing, and then the residual damage had increased. So when they went to record their findings, they were able to use the root cause failure analysis tool to determine that a secondary cause was the mitigation device not operating correctly. So that valve that should have shut off could have reduced the impact of this, but again, it failed to operate. So that's something that's going to result in probably change in our environment, definitely actions that need to be initiated. The systemic issues, causes, where maintenance and inspection practices were incorrect, even though they had years and years of documented proof that they inspect these pipe stands. Obviously they missed the fact that the pipe stands were even there. So, or not the pipe stands, sorry, the sleeves were even there. So that's definitely something that needs to be reviewed and changed. And then obviously the primary cause was that these sleeves were welded onto the bottom of the pipe. They looked through documentation all the documentation when they actually acquired this refinery from another organization, single line drawings. There was no proof that these even existed, so they were totally unaware. One thing that ended up coming out of this is that they realized that these sleeves were actually on all the refineries that they'd acquired from this previous company, and because of that, if you remember, I classified this as a local issue. It now became a regional issue because these refineries were in different states. The story became bigger, and they realized that it needed to be managed accordingly. There is definitely action required, potentially improvements required on each of these, and there's cause ownership so that we can make someone accountable for the follow-up and closure of these particular root causes. Now, often from this point, what I will do is I'll Usually go to management of change, because before you make a change as significant as removing all old sleeves and installing new sleeves, you're going to want to do some type of due diligence. You're going to probably look for funding, do a risk assessment, get proper approvals, some pre and post start actions. So that is definitely part of the story. But there is a follow-up slide presentation video if you want that focuses primarily on MOC, and it will fit very well right into the story at this point. So you can definitely watch that one. I keep it out just to keep time down on this one. But what I will do is jump to the next stage, assuming that I've done the management of change, cross my I's, dotted my, cross my T's, dotted my I's, and understood the impact of this change. What I'm going to do now is actually drive some action. So in this example, you can see that it came from, the originator was the incident. The end result was an MOC, which is what I'm going to skip over. But there was also follow-up work orders, which is part of my action tracking functionality in Maximo. So with that, let's jump to action tracking. So I'm going to return back to the main menu, go back to the Start Center, and the last thing I'm going to do is go to action tracking. So 1307, my refinery fire. Actually, you know what? I could even do this one. So why don't I do that? The source is that incident 2000. And I'm going to go to the work package. So let me explain the action tracking application. Again, typical screen in Maximo, define an action, give it a unique number, set ownership. Summary details is that I'm going to replace sleeves on the ethylene unit. Actually, it probably is going to be all my pipe stands. It's priority 1. It's been mandated, and my time to completion, I've got about a year to actually complete this action. I've got attachments that show me, reference information from the manufacturer of the new pipe sleeves. These happen to be a synthetic material that won't rust. It adheres well to the pipe, and it'll give you a great friction point for many years to come. So what I've done is I've actually created a work package. Anyone familiar with routes in Maximo or in some of the other industry solutions, the campaign capability, it's built off of that functionality. It allows me to put together a work package. So what I can do is I can define a procedure, a single procedure for this change. So all pipe sleeves, there's probably a job plan that says, remove old sleeve, clean up surface, install new sleeves as per manufacturer definition. I would define that one time. I know how long it should take. I know the materials it's going to require. And then I'd apply it to a work package. So I've got a number of locations. And again, this is just a demo set. But I've actually got 5 different pipe stands, refinery 1, pipe stand 1, all the way down to refinery 2, pipe stand 1, that need to have this procedure applied to it. So when I create the work package, it creates a number of work orders all associated together. And then I've got visibility from a summary view of where I am in this project. So in reality, this would probably result in 200 or 300 work orders to replace all these sleeves. I can see that 20% of them are still waiting material. Maybe there's a back order on the replacement material. 20 are still waiting approval. There's probably a lot of coordination that needs to be done with operations. You're not just going to show up with a crane, lift those pipes. You've got to create outages for and isolate the lines because you can't be moving them. The last one that moved caused an explosion. So there's a lot of coordination that needs to be go on. Maybe 20% are on hold. Maybe one of the refineries we're thinking about selling it. So we're going to put that on hold until that's determined. And 40% have been approved or complete. So you've got visibility. Again, this is like a year-long duration. You're always going to want to be able to come into the work package, potentially create KPIs and metrics off of this to see how well you are on the follow-up of the action, especially if you're mandated by a third-party authority. So I'm just going to jump back to the main menu. Quick summary. We talked about a few applications in here. Number 1 was the incident or the defect. Incidents, really the ability to report that incident, what happened, whether it be personal injury, whether it be environmental release. Your organization is going to have a different way of reacting to this. Ours, because I wanted to see a lot of different parts of Maximo, I said it was a refinery fire. That resulted in an investigation. Maybe certain personal injuries require an investigation. It's the ability to collect that CSI data, have it all stored and recorded in one place and directly related back to the incident. And then often a result of the investigation is some type of action, and that's that action tracking application. The one thing we did leave out of this story was MOC, but again, look for the other recording on MOC, and it should fit right into that storyline. So hopefully this gives you an idea the way incident management was designed in Maximo, and stay tuned for more recorded sessions. Appreciate your time.